Hello, everyone. My name's Dr. Melynda Conner. I'm the Business Communication Instructor at Austin Peay State University, and I'm here to talk to you today on behalf of the Small Business Development Center here in Clarksville about giving and receiving feedback. So I'm going to share my screen, and we will begin. So giving and receiving feedback is a part of everyday business. And I'm sure that you do it more often than you might like, but it's important to do it well and to do it often. So who gives and receives feedback in business? All these people: supervisors, customers, clients, employees, regulators, partners, peers, and providers, right? Everybody wants to tell you what they think, and they also want to hear what you have to think. So that's essentially what giving and receiving feedback is all about. Think about for a moment what kind of feedback each person or role provides and receives. So what do supervisors provide you with? Or customers? What do you provide them? Take a moment, kind of think through the list, and then we'll move on. And if you can think of anybody else who gives you feedback or who receives feedback from you, please let me know, because I want to add them to the list for everyone. Feedback is a reality check. It's challenging on both sides, but it's also a learning opportunity because it helps us to consider our strengths and our weaknesses. It builds bonds with one another, creating stronger relationships, hopefully, and it's reciprocal. Not only do we give it, but we also receive it. Why do we need to provide feedback? Well, it works to improve overall performance when done well. It reinforces the positive and takes care of dealing with the negatives. It develops competence and confidence in our team by identifying issues that we have and creating action points to address those issues. It also maintains positivity and productivity if we let it, if we do it well, and if we practice effectively. When we withhold feedback and keep these things to ourselves, that can be costly for both us personally and for our business. Not providing feedback can lead our coworkers or employees to assume that everything is fine, to continue to make the same mistakes that they've been making. Sometimes they'll even develop a false assessment of their skills and abilities, thinking they're doing things well because they're not being corrected. They also might build a misperception of expectations in that way. If you're not correcting them, they're assuming they're doing what is expected and they're doing it correctly. So feedback is extremely important, and when we withhold it, it can be very costly. When we provide effective feedback, it shows we care. We develop our working relationships based on mutual respect. So if we respect someone, we want to give them the feedback they need so that they can do better. When we give feedback, it communicates that we care about our employees. To do it well, we need to make sure we're considering not just our side of the story, but theirs as well. Like they need additional resources. Have they received sufficient training in the area where they are not performing as well as you might like? So offer help. Ask, how can I support you better in the future? And take their responses seriously. That helps workers to open up to advice moving forward, especially if you're kind and positive when you're giving feedback. We also want to make sure that feedback is provided in a timely fashion. We need to offer it as soon after the event as possible, as long as we're not doing it immediately with emotion and in public, right? So we want to find a time to speak privately about this as soon after the event happens. Also, we can ensure that feedback is given in a timely fashion by doing regularly scheduled meetings with our employees to provide that feedback weekly, monthly. Don't wait for that year-end evaluation when things have piled up, right? That would be the culmination of everything, but hopefully you've had many meetings in between during that year to correct any negatives or issues that are happening. And certainly call a special meeting if you believe it's necessary. Like maybe your weekly meeting for feedback is on Friday with this employee, and yet it's Tuesday and they've done something you feel like needs to be addressed right away. Go ahead and call that special meeting, or the whole team may have been involved. So call that special meeting if necessary. Feedback works best when the memory of the event is fresh. That's why we want to be very timely with providing it. Because if we give it days or even weeks after the incident, not only does that weaken our objectivity and our credibility, but it also gives them an opportunity to just forget that it happened or to remember it in a different way than we remember it. So address it quickly. That way everybody's memory is fresh and we can deal with that issue and it won't happen going forward, hopefully. Right. Okay, so when we're delivering critical or negative feedback, we want to make sure we're taking a coaching approach. We want to give the benefit of the doubt to the person who was involved or people who were involved in this incident, and at the same time offer them guidance on how they might improve or what they could have done in the situation. When we give the benefit of the doubt, we show that we understand that it's the issue and not the person, right? That's having where the discrepancy in opinion lies. So we want to make sure that we have positive intent, because our objective with our coworkers, our employees, is to build trust, even our customers, right? So we want to ensure that any critical feedback we provide, any negative feedback that we're providing, comes from a place of respect, not from a place of judgment. Because again, it's about the issue, it's not about the person. That's why we want to make sure we maintain professionalism. Business is not the place for emotion. We need to make sure that we do not provide feedback in a loud way where others can hear, where that would shame the person or people involved. We also don't want to make it public, right, where customers can hear or other employees. When we are loud and emotional and in public, we are being inappropriate as managers, okay? Or even in some instances as customers or coworkers, whatever role we have, it is not okay to provide feedback in a loud, public, emotional way. That's inappropriate in business. It's not professional. We will lose our objectivity and our credibility with that person if we have anything else that we want to share. This also might be perceived as a personal insult or attack. We certainly are not looking for that to happen. And it will negatively infect all of our professional relationships because word gets around. Whether the person was standing there witnessing it, that certainly will impact your professional relationship with that person, or if they hear about it later, right? So let's maintain professionalism, be positive, take a coaching approach, offer ways to help, and pull the person aside. Do this not necessarily quietly, but not loud, right? So be respectful, do it in private, and that way you'll keep your objectivity and credibility and not personally insult or attack someone. When we give effective feedback, we hope that it is received well, because that's important if the feedback is going to work. If we're yelling at someone in public, that's not necessarily going to say to them, oh, this is a learning moment, right? That's not what they hear. They hear that you're unhappy and they did wrong and it's their fault. Then they can't hear anything else that you say because they're in the defensive mode. So we want to make sure that feedback is received well by being professional, keeping emotion out of things, being timely. And that way they are able to hear us, understand that we're wanting to help them to grow and improve. And that will improve the outcome of the situation, the outcome of the relationship, and all future learning opportunities. So this is how we need to give frank feedback, because sometimes feedback is not easy to give. I mean, if everything was all rainbows and roses, then yes, it would be easy. But most of the time, there are some corrections that need to be made or some issues that need to be addressed. So we want to be sure that we are courageous and honest in what we're saying, that we are planning what we're going to say in advance so that we know how we can best approach this person in a way that they can hear what it is we have to say. So we need to first tell what was done correctly, right? Then we identify what can be improved in the situation. So you wrote this letter very well. The format is perfect. I don't see any spelling or grammar errors. However, it would really be improved if you put a closing in your signature, or if you made sure to reiterate what it is that we need them to do at the end of the letter. And then point out how the improvement will impact the team. Once our customers know what they need to do, it'll make it a lot easier and we'll field less questions. Then explain the why behind the feedback. I'm giving you this feedback so that you can improve, so that we can all have a better day when the letter goes out. And then ask them to respond. How does this sound to you? What are your thoughts about this? And listen to what they have to say. And you might want to even adjust what you're doing or what you've suggested based on their feedback when they respond, and let you know how it sounds to them and what their thoughts are. And it shows that you care and that they're an active part of the process, that you're not just dictating to them. So I want you to take a few minutes, pause the video, and create your own feedback message to share. Think of an incident you've had recently or someone you need to give feedback to, and go through these steps. Tell what was done right, identify what can be improved, point out how the improvement will impact the team, explain the why behind the feedback, and then ask for their response. So pause here, take a few moments to do that. Okay. Good job creating your feedback message draft. Okay, now providing constructive feedback is a process and it takes practice. We want to make sure we're delivering feedback in a constructive way and not in a destructive way, because we need these employees. We don't want to onboard new employees all the time just because the ones we have are responding negatively to the feedback we provide and quitting. Right? That's not what we want. We want to build a respectful, cohesive team. So we want to be open, respectful, supportive, empathetic, and relaxed when we're giving our feedback. So make sure if you are feeling emotional that you say something like, I want to see you in my office in 5 minutes, or I want to see you outside in 10 minutes. And then you take the time to compose yourself, calm down, think about how you're going to approach this person using those steps. Tell them what they did correctly, then address what needs to be addressed. Then ask them how they feel about that or what their thoughts are. And you might even want to start with a question like, I want to hear your perspective on what happened just now, right? We want to focus on the tasks, the actions, and the objective events rather than any personality traits. We don't want to use terms like always and never. You always forget to greet customers. So let's not approach somebody like that. Let's use I statements. Something like, when you neglect to greet the customers, I feel like you're disrespecting our business. Do you see how that puts it on you? It shares your feelings about the situation, but it takes care of their action. You address what they did, how it makes you think or feel, right? So use those I statements and focus on the task or the issue, not the people themselves. So let's take a look at the feedback that you just wrote down and make any adjustments based on this constructive method. Here are some examples. Ineffective feedback. Hey, you filled this report out all wrong. I need you to fix it. And then you don't tell them how to fix it, right? Effective feedback addresses the person as a person, not just, hey, Susan, I know this is new and unfamiliar process to you. So here are some ways that I would like for you to improve what you've done here. Right? You are a gentle, kind, positive manager, providing information that can improve that person's process. That's the best way to provide feedback. Okay. 3 keys to successful feedback: communicate effectively, meaning not loud, not public, not emotional, but professional, calm, gathered, put together, focused on the issue. Have a growth mindset. A growth mindset means that even though someone is not doing, or yourself is not doing something correctly right now, they can learn how to do that. So an example of a fixed mindset, which is the opposite of growth mindset, is I'm not a math person. If we add yet to that, I'm not a math person yet. That shows a growth mindset, right? So if we have a growth mindset about our employees, we can train them to also have a growth mindset. I may not be able to do this right now, but with practice and patience, I can become better at it. Who knows? I might even become an expert, right? And then we want to make sure after we provide feedback that we self-reflect. How did I do with that? And we'll talk about this more here in just a moment. So to communicate effectively, we want to make sure we're an active listener. As I mentioned, we may want to start the feedback interaction with, give me your perspective or tell me what happened in your words, right, to the employee. So then actively listen. Don't just assume that you already have the right answer and that you know where this is going. You might, but you might not also. There might be a piece of that puzzle that you're missing. So be sure to ask clarifying questions. Like, what I hear you saying is that that person surprised you and you didn't realize they were there, right? And then get their feedback from that. Then paraphrase for understanding. Oh, I see. You were surprised, and that's why you reacted in the way you did. And then they can say yes or no and provide any additional information that maybe they think you don't have. So always practice active listening. Give people the benefit of the doubt. There's something called the fundamental attribution error. The fundamental attribution error. And that is an error we make as humans. It's a default human tendency to think that if someone is doing something wrong, like cutting me off in traffic, that they are inherently a bad person, that is a core personality trait, that they are just bad and wrong. When really their GPS might be telling them to turn now, and they missed that initial prompt. Or they may be rushing to get to the hospital because someone in their car is sick, or they may need to really use the bathroom, right? There are lots of different reasons that someone might cut me off in traffic. They might just have not seen me at all. Right? So we need to give people the benefit of the doubt when they do things that we perceive as incorrect or wrong or offensive. Okay. We need to find out what that reason is and not commit the fundamental attribution error. We also need to understand that not everyone thinks in the same way. There's no way we can. We were all raised differently. We've all had different education experiences. We've all had different work and life experiences that have brought us to this point. And we do not think in the same ways. It's just virtually impossible. However, another human default tendency is to assume that everybody thinks the way we do. That's called the false consensus bias. So when we approach people, for instance, let's say I give someone instructions to make the bed, and they make the bed the way they do. They just put the pillows on and throw the comforter over it, bed's made. But I was expecting all the throw pillows to be in particular places, the dust ruffle to be straightened out, the sheets to be folded in hospital corners, and everything to be precise. But I didn't give those specific instructions. I just said make the bed, assuming that they knew what I wanted. That is false consensus bias. So we don't want to commit the false consensus bias any more than we want to commit the fundamental attribution error. So we need to understand that not everyone thinks the same way we think. And when we understand that, we can communicate more effectively. We also want to have a growth mindset in believing that people can improve, make our instructions clear, provide them opportunities to practice and grow. And feedback is a big part of that. We need to point out the areas where they can improve and offer supportive suggestions. Then praising their progress really helps. And when we give feedback, we want to make sure we self-reflect after each interaction. How can we improve next time? In what ways did I prepare? What did I do well? What might I have done differently? What didn't work at all? How might I better approach this next time, whether it's a person or an issue? And what notes should I make? I really encourage you after every feedback interaction to take 3 or 4 minutes to sit down, ask yourself these questions, make notes to yourself in a journal or some document on your computer, some document that you can keep so that you can look back at it later. If the incident happens again with a different person, or if other incidents happen with the same person, and then you can kind of let yourself be reminded of how you handled it, how you felt like you might improve, and then maybe this next interaction will go better. There are barriers to feedback, especially in the receipt of that feedback. We want to make sure that the person we're speaking to understands what it is we're really trying to say in the way we're trying to say it. Because remember, they might not understand about the false consensus bias. They might think that everybody thinks the same way, and they may be thinking in a particular way and assuming that you're thinking that way. And really, y'all are just perpendicular or at odds. So barriers can include general feedback that doesn't relate to specific facts. Okay, when we just give something generally like that was awful and walk away, they have zero idea what we thought was awful or how they might improve. So that's another barrier, is not giving any advice to improve. Also, if there's very little respect from either side, that's a big barrier to someone being able to receive feedback from you or even to give you feedback. If they have a fear of upsetting you or you have a fear of upsetting them, that will prevent you from giving professional, constructive, effective feedback. And if they are resistant to feedback, you can't change that. You can simply do your best to provide feedback in the best way you know how. And it's up to them as to whether or not they can receive it well or not. A lot of times people don't hear feedback the same way that we intend for them to. That might be due to personality, fears or emotions, their self-confidence, the context in which it is provided, or their individual reasoning, which is a little different than ours. So conversation, collaboration, respectful communication really helps. Now, there are going to be times when you're receiving feedback, whether you've asked for it, like in a customer survey, or whether you are surprised by it. Somebody's like, I need to tell you this, right? So your goal in that moment, take a deep breath and say, okay, I'm going to have a professional conversation that benefits me, right? So when you are receiving feedback or when someone else is receiving feedback from you, you want to make sure that you've created a psychologically safe space where you and them feel comfortable expressing your feelings, your ideas, your opinions without any fear of consequence. You also want to assume that feedback comments are reality in the context of that other person's perceptions and impressions. And they need to see that that's when you're giving feedback, that you're doing this because it's what you've seen, what you feel, what you think, and it's your reality in the context of the situation. Be sure to ask questions to clarify what it is they're actually saying, so you need to make sure that you're remaining calm enough to think of questions to ask so that you can be clear on what it is they're trying to tell you. Paraphrase what is being said so that you're sure you understand. And then show appreciation by taking that feedback seriously, not only by saying thank you. You always want to say thank you for your thoughts. I will take those into consideration, right? But then show appreciation, especially if it's your team members, your employees, by taking that feedback seriously and seeing if there's a way that you can improve, okay? We talked about regularly scheduled feedback sessions. Make sure you do that. Weekly, bi-weekly, private one-on-one sessions, not as a team. Check in with them about their work and their projects. Offer support that's reasonable. We're not talking about unreasonable support. Share your feedback, both positive and negative. Develop an ongoing open dialogue with them for mutual respect. If you continue to have these meetings and they are professional and effective, then that respect is just going to build and that trust is going to build. And that's what you want in a strong team. Provide them the opportunity to improve before evaluation time. That's what these sessions really do. And that way you're building strength in your team and in your workforce. And then ask them for any feedback they have for you. And if you have delivered your feedback in a respectful, constructive, positive coaching manner, they are going to most likely model that in giving you feedback. So you're teaching by doing as well. And that benefits everybody. So I encourage you to share your feedback that you wrote earlier with the person that you have intended it for sometime very soon. After you provide that feedback, confirm with them that they understand what it is you're trying to say. Make sure that they receive the message you intended to send. Summarize the session in a letter or an email. I really appreciated our conversation. This is what we talked about. This is our plan going forward. I look forward to hearing from you. Give them time to improve and assess, at the next feedback meeting, whether or not those positive changes were made and provide them with follow-up feedback. Then reflect on how it went. Did it go as you thought it would? How did you think it was perceived by them? So to sum up, giving and receiving effective feedback are critical skills for business effectiveness. If you can master this, you will have a strong, supportive, respectful team. So the feedback process is an essential part of professional development. It leads to improved performance and customer satisfaction. It focuses on behaviors that can be improved and results in increased worker confidence and independence. So they're not coming to you for every little thing. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. Here's my contact information. I'm Dr. Melynda Conner, Business Communication Instructor at Austin Peay State University College of Business. Here's my phone number and my email. I'm looking forward to hearing from you, and I really appreciate you joining me today. I'm going to stop sharing just so I can say thank you so much, and I hope you have a great day. Good luck with giving and receiving feedback, and let me know how it goes. I'd love to hear from you. Hope you have a great day.